Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we are going to talk all about spot reduction. There was a newer study that was published in November 2023 that claims abdominal aerobic endurance exercise reveals spot reduction exists. And while I have talked about spot reduction endlessly on this channel, I actually don't have a dedicated video to it. So today, that's what this is. We'll break down what spot reduction is, what the science says, and how it's being presented now in social media. So let's jump into a quick definition so we're all on the same page. Spot reduction is the ability to choose where we lose fat on the body. For example, if I do bicep curls, I'll get rid of the fat on my upper inner arm. And unfortunately, that's simply not how it works. The overwhelming majority of studies conclude that resistance training does not impact fat tissue in terms of localized reduction. Resistance training will affect your muscle fibers, not your fat tissue. And the only way that we can lose fat tissue is by being in a negative energy balance or a caloric deficit, meaning you're taking in less calories than you're expending. And then your genetics will determine where you gain or lose body fat from. So now that we're on the same page about what spot reduction is, let's talk about this new study that came out last year. All right, so this study came out in November of 2023, and it's called Abdominal Aerobic Endurance Exercise Reveals Spot Reduction Exists, a randomized controlled trial. Honestly, that sounds incredible. And believe it or not, this is not the only study that comes to the conclusion of spot reduction being real. Those number of studies are very small, and this is the first one to use aerobic exercise with resistance training. But let's just discuss this one, and then we'll kind of go from there. So they took 16 overweight men, and they used BMI to define overweight. One group had to do an abdominal endurance exercise with treadmill running, and then the control group did treadmill running only. So one group did treadmill running and an abdominal exercise, and then the other group only did treadmill running. And then essentially all this means right here is that the group that did the abdominal exercises lost more fat, specifically in the abdominal region. So then the conclusion was, if you combine abdominal exercises with aerobic endurance, or treadmill running in this case, you will be able to spot reduce fat on the abdomen. Now, really quickly before we go on, I will be the absolute first person to tell you that I am not the most qualified person to be interpreting studies. And by the most qualified person, I mean I'm barely qualified. Reading studies is like a skill, like an actual skill, and I simply don't have that skill set. So I actually follow a handful of people who do have that skill set so that I can not only understand the information better myself, but then also help others understand it as well, and then use that information to influence my programming and what I do with clients. So we're actually going to look at a clip from somebody who does have the skills to really interpret data like this in different studies, and then we'll come back and chat about it.
Let's talk about this new study that allegedly confirms the existence of spot reduction, because there are in fact a lot of limitations, and in my opinion this title is incredibly misleading. The most obvious limitation is that this was in only 16 men, so there were only 8 per group, which is pretty common in exercise intervention studies, but still, these results will definitely need to be replicated. In my opinion, the biggest limitation is that there were no dietary controls. They did not look at these subjects' diets at all, which to me is incredibly important when we're talking about fat loss, energy balance makes a huge difference. Secondly, these exercise interventions were supposedly matched for caloric expenditure, but they didn't directly measure energy expenditure for any of the subjects, and I'll talk about that more in the caption. Just make a little mental note for me that the control group here exercised for 45 minutes, whereas the intervention group exercised for 84 minutes, which may have implications for total daily energy expenditure. Another really important consideration is that the intervention arm had a higher body fat percentage than the control arm at baseline. Even though this wasn't statistically significant, the percent body fat of the trunk in the intervention group was 5% higher than the control group, which is considerable, especially when the degree of so-called spot reduction only differed by 1.2% between groups. To me, my interpretation of these results is that the intervention group lost more fat in their trunk because they had more to lose. We also don't know what their diets looked like, we don't know what their absolute energy expenditure was like, and men tend to lose more body fat from their trunk.
So to sum all of that up, I think the big point here is that we're not really getting the full picture. This study almost seems like it's cherry picking information to prove its point. And believe me, would I love for there to be a way to target specifically fat storage on the body? 100%. But we can't use one study to come to that conclusion. Unfortunately, some coaches are. I spent an embarrassingly long amount of time trying to find this one video where I had a back and forth interaction with a coach or creator. Jump scare. Okay, sorry. I am editing, so I'm in my editing hole, and I decided to do one more search for this creator, and I found them. All I did was go to Google and put Instagram, and I put the PubMed number. Don't know why I didn't think of that earlier. So the creator is Strong by Sarah, or Sarah Granetz, and we're gonna look at some of the misleading content right now. So this video says you can actually spot reduce fat. A new study was just published. Read about it in the caption. So she basically just breaks down what the study says, and then what does this mean for you? We cannot pick where our bodies choose to store fat, but if we are more sensitive to about a specific body part, we can use targeted training to change the fat mass and muscle mass of that body part within reason, with the right training. It won't happen overnight, and for some of us, the natural results still might not be the aesthetic we prefer, but we do not need to accept anything about our current physiques if we don't want to. I'm not advocating dropping calories. I'm not advocating not learning to love yourself. I'm saying with the right training, maybe you can learn to love your bigger arms. Maybe with the right training, you can learn to love your stomach. Maybe with the right training, you can fall in love with the power to sculpt and change your body by taking care of it and working hard. Comment 6-pack to start my weighted ab workout program at the home or at the gym today. Okay, so basically the video, which is what most people will stop at, is, hey, you can spot reduce fat. Science shows it. I go, oh wow, let me go to the caption. Links a study, really lengthy. Oh my gosh, this is a lot of stuff. Oop, you have a program that takes the information from this study and can get me a 6-pack? Oh, hell yeah, I'm in. It is very misleading. To take a handful of studies and say, hey, look, I told you this is real, really gives the like cherry picking energy, really gives the it worked for me, so it must work for you. She has a few others on here, so let's take a look. So this one's the exact same clip, and the video says, when a new medical study says you can spot reduce fat. It's the exact same caption. Great. Next one. When you try to tell me abs are genetic, but a new study shows some people can spot reduce. Same exact caption. It's all just very misleading. We have another one here. It's the same video. Let's go back to the Justina that looks much more put together. People will cherry pick selective studies to support whatever they're trying to prove, which is called confirmation bias. There's a reason why we say that science is not 100% accurate. There's always some sliver of doubt. And that's just because we're always learning more. And really, if we look at exercise science specifically, we have not been studying it that long in the course of human history. And most of those studies have been done on men. We're starting to catch up now, but it's going to take some time. So is there a chance that with further studies, we do discover that with a combination of abdominal exercises and aerobic endurance drills, we actually can spot reduce fat? Absolutely. But the overwhelming amount of evidence right now tells us that is not possible. So if you are seeing someone sell something to you or promote something to you and they're linking studies, take it with a grain of salt. So hopefully this video gets us all on the same page with what spot reduction is, what the current studies are pointing to in terms of the science, and who you can trust online. If you have any specific questions, please leave them down below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, and I will see you all in the next one.